Thanks for having me. Dot, I appreciate the invite to speak. I think it's always a great opportunity to get in front of people in the community. So my name is Andrew Cedrone. I am a Winchester resident. I have two high school age boys. I've got a freshman and a junior at the high school. And I've been in mental health counseling. Come on in. Go on in. We just started. I'm just introducing myself. So I'm Andrew Cedrone. I have been, I've been in Winchester now for probably 15, 20 years. But I've been in public education and mental health field for pushing 25 years or so. And the topic of gambling really came up to me about 2 years ago when the prevention coordinator in Wakefield, the town that I work at, I'm an adjustment counselor in Wakefield, had asked me, what do I know about gambling? Why don't we start talking about gambling? A lot of the talks I give and a lot of the interventions I give are around mental health issues, substance use. This is a quick little synopsis of all the pots that I have my hand in here. I'm a private therapist I have about a caseload of about 15 to 20 kids where I do private therapy at night on Zoom. And my whole caseload is high school age, a few college kids, maybe some middle schoolers. I'm an adjustment counselor at Wakefield Middle School, Galvin Middle School in Wakefield. I've been there for about 10 years. I'm also the mental health coordinator in Wakefield. So I, coordinate screenings. I manage some grants for the district, all SEL and mental health related. I am also the ABC program group counselor here in town. Many of you guys may know the ABC House. I go over there a couple times a month and just do group counseling with the scholars over there. Up at Wakefield High School, if you get caught with substances in school, you have to take a class with me. I'm the diversion educator. If we catch kids vaping or using THC, that type of thing. And then also I run a program out of Boston College in the summer. It's a college readiness program for kids with high anxiety or kids that are on the autism spectrum, called Next Step, out of the Baker Center in Boston. So I'm not saying all of this just to talk about all my jobs here, but more so to explain that my life, including my home life with my two boys, is surrounded by high school, college, middle school age kids. And so, I should say the disclaimer is I am by no means an expert in gambling, right? The majority of the things I deal with kids is anxiety, depression, social conflicts, family dynamics, school issues, some substance use, healthy living, and gambling is certainly in that mix. However, about 2 years ago, I was approached, like I said, hey, Andrew, what do you know about gambling? I'm like, well, what do you know? I don't know. It's gambling, it's a thing, and there had just been rumblings that it was on the rise in youth. And I was tasked with doing some research, finding out more about the trends in gambling, and presenting in Wakefield at a parent university on the topic. So I did that. I was actually extremely surprised at the prevalence of it, how intense it is, and really just kind of what was considered gambling, what wasn't, and things like that. All these things that I had been involved with in my life, my family, friends, my clients, my students, that I didn't really consider gambling, but when you kind of looked at it in a different lens, it actually was gambling. So it was pretty interesting. After that, Melrose, the coalition in Melrose wanted me to do a presentation there, and then eventually Dot got her hands on me here and tried to convince me to come. So that's why I'm here today. So, absolutely. So for all you worrier parents out there like myself, right, it's like we have one more thing to worry about, right? Every day since your child was born, you're worrying about their health, their safety, right? As they get older, you're worrying about, stranger danger when they're little. Then you're worrying about vaping, and you're worrying about drinking in high school. You're worrying about, my oldest has his driver's license now. Drives me crazy. It's the scariest thing ever. All those types of things. Dating, safety, right? Sex, all the things we worry about. And now, to me, this is a kind of newer topic. It's always been there in the background, but I don't think it's typically considered in the same vein as the things I just mentioned, right? So again, just give you one more thing to worry about with your kids, right? But again, today I'm just really more talking to you as an informed parent. All right, so the basics of defining gambling, right? Starting with the basics, right? I mean, obviously we know, Dot was talking a little bit about the raffles, right? We have fundraising raffles. I know for SFC, for the club that my boys play soccer in, we do a raffle. It's a $20 ticket and the winner gets $1,000 and we take all the rest of the money towards fundraising, right? We do Super Bowl squares, whether it's with my family at a Super Bowl party, fundraisers as well. I think at my family holiday events, we play left, right, center. Have you ever played that one?
Right,
it's like, yeah, right, yes, right? It's the best game ever. Do you play it for money? Do you play it? Because
With my grandkids, I play with M&Ms, but with the
M&M. There you go. Yeah, you know, and
use a friendly game.
it is, and it's not like the stakes are high here. We're not sitting here, you know, but it's a fun game, right? I remember in when I was in probably elementary school, I remember my father hosting poker nights at our house, and his friends would come over in our basement, our finished basement, and they'd, you know, play a game. In college, I remember playing poker with my friends. You know, so this is always running in the background of our culture and our society, right? But again, this is, you know, I think the old view of gambling or a gambling problem is like, oh, you know, that old uncle that bets on horse racing, or, you know, that guy who's always at the casino and things like that. And that is really antiquated, right? Certainly there are casinos. We obviously know Massachusetts, you know, has a new casino that is, you know, has not been here for a long time. They obviously legalized sports gambling, things like that. But that old view of a gambler being an older gentleman maybe that is betting on horses or going to the casino all the time, it's still there, but it is a whole new model now of youth. And realistically, it's you know, on the rise due to a lot of the technology, the cell phones that kids have, you know, in their hands at all times. So again, right, obviously we know it doesn't take a genius to figure out gambling, risking something of value on the outcome of an event where the probability of winning is less than certain, right? We all know what gambling is. Social gambling, fantasy sports, right? The rise of fantasy sports is obviously huge as well, because all is roped in with, you know, financial gain. And then obviously at the other end of the spectrum, you've got problem gambling or severe gambling, which again, as you would understand, it can actually be a DSM diagnosis of a true addiction, where the gambling is, you know, akin to a substance use disorder where you are addicted to it, you are losing significant amounts of money, it is having a significant impact on your functioning and your life and your relationships, and that. So obviously pretty self-explanatory there. All right, so some of the trends we've seen, this is where it starts to get interesting, right? Is gambling is just reaching a younger audience. And I know we had talked a little bit earlier about some other trends going on. To me, one of the biggest issues right now is our kids are being exposed to themes at a much younger age than we were exposed to them. Whether it's substance use, sexuality, you know, violence on the internet, things like that, everything. We all experience those things at certain ages and stages in our life, but because all of our kids have a computer in their hand 24/7, they're being exposed to it far earlier than we were and far earlier than they should, and that it's healthy for them. So research out of McGill University indicates 60 to 80% of high school students have gambled for money in 2023. Surprising, kinda. It's a high number, certainly a high number. But then when you think of what, you know, gambling means, and whether it's a game or whether you're, you know, playing a casino game, it's pretty high. Increased problem gambling, right? A poll out of 2024 said that 37% of Gen Z respondents who bet on sports describe themselves as addicted. And that's 14% higher than the average across all ages. So it is really being targeted more as a young adult problem. I spoke with someone who had been involved with like Gamblers Anonymous, right? Similar to like an Alcoholics Anonymous organization. And they said, you know, years ago, 15 years ago, it was all older adults who were, you know, addicted to gambling. And now it is filled with young men in their 20s. That's what the Gambling Anonymous is filled with. That is just a huge pivot from what we've seen. And again, it probably correlates with the rise of social media and, you know, technology with getting the gambling devices in your hands, right? So again, I think that, let me see here, the average average onset, it can see even start as young as 10. So again, it goes back to my idea of just everything is being exposed to kids at a younger age, because I grew up without a cell phone, right? I'm 48, so I didn't have a cell phone growing up. The first time I was exposed to gambling, again, maybe I saw my dad play a poker game. Maybe I can't even really think of any other times, right? I mean, we weren't going to casinos, and we didn't have the online, probabilities of that. So I didn't get exposed to it probably when I was probably about 19. I think we went up to Montreal on a ski trip, and I think we stopped at the Montreal casino, and we were like, oh my God, what is this, But I was 19, and now there's kids as early as 10 who basically have a casino in the palm of their hand. And so that discrepancy is huge, and that just has a huge impact. Just a couple little fast facts here. And we have these in these little packets you can take home as well. A lot of these are right from out of there. But 50% of 6th to 8th graders have engaged in some form of gambling. It's a lot of kids. 80% of high school kids have gambled in the last year. 10 years old is the earliest that they can develop some type of gambling disorder. And 4 to 8% of youth are impacted by problem gambling compared to just 1% of adults, which is interesting, right? Because I kind of assumed that, when you're older, you've got money to gamble. I mean, how are young kids being affected by problem gambling when they don't have jobs, they don't have an income, they don't have money to spend? But that certainly is definitely a trend. All right, so we'll look at some of these contributing factors, right? So accessibility of online gambling, right? So legalized online sports betting, casino apps makes gambling available 24/7 from any device, right? So many youth bypass the age restrictions using parents' accounts, unregulated sites. I've heard stories of kids signing up for gambling sites, putting in their parents' credit card, putting in parents or older siblings or older cousins' social security number, and you're in, and that's it. You can just gamble just like you would at any casino, 24 hours a day, up in your bedroom, on your cell phone. So again, it's accessibility, right? Similar to how we've seen a rise in THC usage amongst youth, right? Obviously correlates with the legalized marijuana in Massachusetts. It's around more, there's dispensaries around, it's legal for adults. Recreational marijuana, it's around people's homes more. Oh, my friend's parents smoke. There's vaping devices in the house. It's easy to grab, things like that. The accessibility is so much easier, so you're going to see the incident rate come up. And that's the same with the gambling. It's just, very easy to access. Normalization and advertising, right? So obviously, as a society, you see, I'm sure you've all seen the DraftKings, advertisements. A lot of these, or the majority of the sports gambling apps and organizations, are right in bed with the pro sports. So if you watch Monday Night Football, there'll be a DraftKings advertisement. DraftKings will sponsor the halftime show, or things like that. They'll put fantasy football scores on the screen for the real football games. So it's really being incorporated into sports in an everyday, common occurrence. Advertisers promote gambling to young adults. Social media influencers, right? So all of our kids, right, they follow a famous YouTuber, a TikToker, or whatever. And, unbeknownst to them, right, these influencers are being paid by many people to advertise their products, and a lot of the gambling sites target those influencers to help, push their product, which is the gambling. And then lastly, the speculative behavior, right? We're finding that the younger generations are much more likely to engage in other forms of financial speculation, right? The rise of cryptocurrency and buying and selling and trading and day trading. It's just, that type of engagement wasn't really around when I was younger. Sure, there was the stock market, but, today, a high school student can open a Robinhood account and trade stocks. And they can purchase cryptocurrency, and they can, a lot of social media is driven towards that get rich quick kind of attitude. And gambling falls right in line with that. I mean, I've had conversations with my younger son, who's a freshman, who jokes all the time. He's like, Dad, I knew the Patriots were going to win. I mean, if I had just put money on it, it would have been incredible. I would have made $100. I mean, everyone knew they were going to win. You know, that type of thing. It's not really how it works, you know. But again, these are all the contributing factors that are trending towards the issue. A few more fast facts. You know, one of the things that stands out to me here is the number of youth with gambling problems has quadrupled in the last 2 years. So this is a fairly recent trend of how quickly this is increasing. Again, I think it is, a lot of it is sports gambling, but I'll also show you as we go on. There are a lot of casino apps that mimic real casinos, everything with the odds and all the games, and it's virtual currency, but it's used to hook kids early. And they get used to playing all the games and being into it. And then the leap to using real money is a very easy jump. 80% of high school students report have gambled for money in the last year. So, you know, it definitely starts to rise. So this is another big one. I won't go back, but in the previous slide as well, is that there is a huge correlation between individuals who struggle with gambling or who are engaging in gambling and substance use and mental health issues such as increased thoughts of suicide. So this is a study out of Oregon, I believe, back in 2020. And there's just a very large correlation with gambling and substance use. And the reason that is gambling, just like substance use, is an addictive behavior. So addiction is the gene that is passed down, right, from family members. It is an addiction gene. So addiction does not have a marker of like, substance use or this or that, right? So, you know, sometimes if you say, well, my parents were both alcoholics, so I have a higher incident potential chance to become an alcoholic because addiction is in my family. It's not just becoming an alcoholic. It's also becoming addicted to shopping or addicted to working out or addicted to gambling. You know, that is an addictive gene. So you see a huge correlation. You know, a 2.9, increase of individuals who gambled versus not gambled for drinking alcohol. Binge drinking, smoking cigarettes, vapes, and using marijuana. All the individuals who gambling have a higher use incident rates of all these substances. And then also, this was out of 2020, so a little further back. I think that first one was 2024. Again, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, and attempted suicide. And again, similar to a lot of what we see and know about social media and the dopamine chasing, right? I don't know if many of you have heard of this, but the short bursts of TikTok, clips of attention, keeping your mind going fast. And that is like a dopamine hit for everyone when they're using, your cell phone. And for young kids, it's a lot stronger based on their brain chemistry. We'll get to that in a little bit. But individuals that are anxious, individuals that are depressed, they're seeking that dopamine rush, right? Because they have a chemical imbalance, and that's why they struggle with anxiety or depression. And chasing that dopamine is a way of a coping strategy. And that's why individuals who struggle with mental health issues potentially have a higher incident rate of substance use, but they'll also have a higher incident rate of gambling. Because again, gambling, that win, right? I'm sure we've all won something at one time. You get that quick high, it feels great. Like, oh my God, I won the raffle. Oh, I won the door prize. I don't know, I won the slot machine, if I was at a casino or things like that, right? So that is a huge piece that it just correlates with substance use and mental health issues. All right, we have got some behavioral and psychological factors, right? Obviously, youth that gamble online have a higher rate of problem gambling compared to those that gamble in person. Obviously, it's about accessibility, right? It's not like youth are going to casinos. It's not like they're going to backroom poker games in Boston, It's all because they have a device in their hand that they can access gambling. In-person gambling is much more of an adult problem. right? I mean, it's because you have to have the means to get to a casino, or the means to log in and do sports gambling. But again, the online access just increases the chance of problem gambling. Loot boxes in video games, which I'll play a short clip in a little while to get more into that. But basically, purchasing what's called a loot box, which is a blind reward type of system that's embedded in many, if not all, video games right now, is an early way of getting kids into the idea of gambling. It's whether you're betting virtual currency on something that will make you better in the game, whether it's a Fortnite, weapon, or something in Roblox where you get the better, animal for this game that will make you better at winning the game and things like that. And so that's a huge piece of the early addiction. Poor coping skills and social connections. Youth who lack good coping mechanisms or a strong sense of belonging at school are definitely at a higher risk. Again, dopamine chasing, social connectedness. If you're gambling and you're winning, it's something to be social with, something to talk to other kids about, something to feel good about yourself. So I think a lot of times I've seen the kids that I've worked with who struggle with gambling, sometimes, not that athletes wouldn't be gambling, because it's obviously sports betting is such a popular thing, but a lot of times kids who aren't athletes, maybe aren't musicians, maybe aren't incredible students, gambling is like a thing. It's like a thing that they can do and be involved in and talk to people about. So again, sometimes kids that struggle a little bit more socially. As I said, problem gambling is linked with substance use and impulsivity and social media use. As you probably imagine, males are definitely more likely to gamble and have problem gambling issues, although it doesn't mean the girls are not. However, I do see that, having two boys myself, and actually my private practice caseload is mainly young men. We focus a lot in society on all the pressures on young women, right? There's the body image pressures, the sexual pressures, and all those types of things that young girls and women struggle with. And on the flip side, our young men have this, hyper-masculine pressure in society to be tough, to be cool, and to take risks and that type of thing. And that goes hand in hand with gambling. That is a very, you see it in movies, you see it in culture, in music, and I think that males are targeted more, a lot, with, especially because it's sports gambling. But I think that's definitely something there where it would affect the boys much more than the girls. If you grow up around it, obviously, family history, just like anything, right? Just like substance use, growing up, my family weren't big drinkers, so I'm not really a very big drinker. I didn't grow up around it, right? So it's not to say I couldn't develop a problem with alcohol, but typically if it's in your family, it's acceptable in your family. It can be harder, if you have a big family history. Age, obviously, highest risk is 18 to 24, but starting as early as 10. Ethnicity, some studies have shown higher rates among certain racial and ethnic minorities, such as African American, indigenous peoples, compared to white and Asian Americans. We obviously know the history of gambling and casinos with indigenous, tribes in the United States. It's a very long, dicey history there. But certainly, we also know that, big tobacco targeted minority groups when they were trying to get, people addicted to tobacco and cigarettes. So same playbook. You'll see a lot of the same trends that big tobacco or alcohol companies use to target kids and get them hooked, that you'll see as with gambling. Academic and environmental factors. A lot of times kids who struggle in school, I talked a little bit about that, right, are higher risk. Kids who don't have a thing, who don't have a, potentially a sport or a music, something that they're really into. Socioeconomic status is an interesting one. A lot of factors linked to lower socioeconomic status associated with higher odds for gambling. However, right, we live in a quite affluent community of Winchester, and I have a lot of kids in private practice and in throughout my travels with who I've been working with. And I think that sometimes in affluent communities, kids are more likely to have their parents' credit card saved on their phone, linked to all their accounts, and potentially affluent families not checking over every receipt every month in your credit card balance to see what's gone in and what's gone out. Because I have heard stories of parents being completely unknown to a lot of this activity. So socioeconomic is an interesting piece. I think lower socioeconomic is at risk, but also I think high economic as well. And then family acceptance, right? That's what it comes down to everything. If it's accepted in your family, if it's not accepted in your family, where your boundaries are. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about the young brain, right? This is kind of what I talked a little bit about. What we know about the brain is that it's not fully developed until you're about 22, 24, 25, 26, around there. And we know that anything you do to your brain at an early age is going to affect the way it develops and it affect the way it responds moving forward into adulthood. So we know if the earlier individuals use substances early, regularly, the higher chance that you have to become an addict. And I think that goes with a lot of addictive behaviors. So when you're learning at a young age to get kind of addicted to that dopamine rush of winning and chasing that high, it's the same type of thing as with substance use. But so the young brain's reward center is much more sensitive to potential rewards, leading teenagers to take greater risks, which leaves them a lot more susceptible to gambling. Right? Stimulates the reward pathways just like substances would, alcohol, THC, through dopamine. And, the wins make it very compelling, right? The most highest reinforcing schedule is intermittent reinforcing, or I should say random reinforcement. So like a slot machine, right? No one would play a slot machine if you knew every 10th pull you're going to win, because it's predictable, you know what it is, it's not fun. No one's going to pull the first 9. You want to pull the 10th one so you can win. But the point that it's randomized, that is a huge reinforcer. That never knowing if you're going to win, if you're going to hit that next one, right? My boys are always trying to get me to buy scratch tickets when I go down to Town Pantry, And I'll buy one every once in a while. I kind of like a scratch ticket, but it's that idea. Oh my God, you could win $1 million. Powerball, things like that, right? Absolutely. So kids' brains are just so much more susceptible to this because they're not completely developed, right? And actually, the high risk taking and low decision making is actually an evolutionary trait, from our ancestors, right? This was they intentionally, which is so interesting, but that age group of like late middle school to like late high school, their impulsivity is high and their judgment is low and their risk-taking is high, and it is evolutionary, going back to like caveman days, right? So young people would, leave their tribe and go out and meet people and explore and take risks, as opposed to staying home and not kind of furthering the production. So it's certainly evolutionary, expectedness, but it certainly does not play well into the hands of some of this. So again, heightened reward sensitivity. Teenagers' brains show a greater activity in the reward center compared to adults, right? So they're going to get those highs and lows and that addiction much more than like if we were playing, if we weren't, akin to gambling throughout the years. Impulsive behavior, underdeveloped prefrontal cortex as they're young, controls impulse control, decision making, makes it a lot harder for adolescents to weigh the long-term effects and consequences, right? When I talked to my son, Jack, I was saying, you might win 1 or 2, but you're gonna probably lose more than you win. That's like the casinos, right? The house always wins. The games are stacked against you. And that logic is just hard to grasp as a middle schooler or a high schooler, And again, added in with the risk-taking. A lot more risk-taking amongst this age group. So it all plays perfectly in with gambling. So again, I put this slide up, right? I don't know if you're following the most recent news with gambling. That's the hoop fellas out of the New York Post, right? So Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier, they're both actually ex-Celtics at one time, were involved in just busted for a huge fixed poker ring amongst NBA players and the mafia. I mean, it was a huge FBI sting. They got arrested. It's a big deal. Shohei Ohtani, right? Probably one of, if not the best baseball player currently, if not all time. His translator, who he was extremely close with, got caught gambling significant amounts of money, and there was a lot of question if the player was involved or not. Pete Rose, way back in the day, the old famous, sorry I bet on baseball. Pete Rose was, caught betting and fixing games or betting on games that he was involved in. And going way back to the White Sox, right? Shoeless Joe Jackson throwing the World Series that they were gambling on. So sports and gambling have always gone hand in hand. Referees, there's been referee scandals around gambling. So again, it's hard because the youth are so drawn towards athletes and sports. So this is a very quick couple minute clip here I'll play. Hopefully the volume.
The ads are everywhere.
BetMGM is for everyone that loves sports betting.
March Madness mania. Now a sports betting craze, with Americans estimated to legally wager more than $2.7 billion on the college basketball tournament.
Fans can pick if I'll make or miss $10 million.
But with sports betting legal in 38 states and D.C., and more apps than ever making it easy to sign up, critics worry putting money on a game is going too far and skewing too young.
It's getting to be normalized at such a young age that we're seeing high schoolers specifically getting hooked to it.
25-year-old Rob Minnick says he learned the pitfalls of wagering money the hard way as an avid Philadelphia sports fan.
There were wins, but never a win that was satisfactory enough to say, okay, that's enough. That all culminated in the last day that I gambled. In that 12 hours, I created 6 months worth of debt.
Experts say people even younger are playing a losing game. Approximately 60% of high school-aged adolescents report having gambled for money in the past year.
They don't think about the consequences.
Gary Schneider with Gamblers Anonymous says support group members keep getting younger.
Prior to online gambling, to have somebody come in at around 24 was a rarity. What's going on currently now is that we're getting people in as young as 16 years old.
Some are using social sportsbook apps and daily fantasy leagues, two categories of gaming that aren't as regulated as traditional sports betting. In most cases, you only have to be 18 to sign up, but experts say digitally savvy kids can easily get around those restrictions. We tried out an app called Fliff, considered a social sportsbook or sweepstakes app. I was able to sign up easily without even having to prove my age. 18. Create account.
That's all it took.
You use virtual currency to play, so it's not considered true gambling.
You're using in-game currency. It's not technically real money, but you can buy the in-game currency. So it kind of skirts around that law of being old enough.
In a statement, Fliff said users could not make a purchase until they verified their identity, but that their platform allows individuals who are interested in having an opinion on sports to do so without actually having to spend any money. Daily fantasy leagues are not considered sports betting, in part because federal law considers fantasy sports a game of skill, not chance. How much money are kids losing?
Let's say they do like 4 different leagues, all $20, and they don't win any, then they lose $80 just like that.
Connecticut high schoolers Marissa Marks and Nate Testone concerned the trend has become the norm among their peers.
I truly feel like it's getting worse.
Before you place that bet on March Madness, listen to my story.
Minnick using social media and his experience to help other young people avoid the risks and seek treatment.
Some people say that these apps are grooming or training young people into gambling. Do you agree with that?
I do. If we're constantly being shown something as glamorous, normal, profitable, we're going to believe that. No one's showing you why you shouldn't place that bet.
Calling it a losing bet in the wrong hands.
Wow, Valerie, I feel like every parent should see that story. What did experts tell you about the need or what's needed to protect teens from the risks of betting?
Well, Kate, you said it comes down to parents. The experts say this is really about prevention, and parents should be talking to their teens, their young people, about gambling in the same way they do about drugs, about alcohol. They should really be talking to them about the consequences. Experts say they also would like to see more education in schools, teachers and guidance counselors having those same conversations with those students.
Yeah,
Kate?
Makes sense. Valerie Castro, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top.
So again, a lot more about what we were just talking about. I have another slide in a little bit about that Fliff app, which is really interesting. And I also give in a little bit a first-hand account from one of my Wakefield graduates who's at UMass now. And he talks a lot about how his whole friend group was into that, and it pivoted right into real gambling for money, at the high school, and how that was really like a, when you talk about like a gateway drug back in the day, right? That these certain drugs are gateway drugs to higher drugs. That's what it kind of feels like. So just to piggyback on top of that is kind of like the video game world, right? During COVID, because I work in schools, I was home, because my school was closed, and I was home with my boys, and we played a lot of video games in our free time. And we played a lot of, at the time we were playing a game called NBA 2K, which is a basketball game. It's fantastic. Great game. It's really fun. Just like a typical sports basketball game. However, what I learned as I was playing it, I didn't think twice about it then, but as I did this research, I kind of thought back. There is basically an entire stock market casino style, quadrant of these video games, even like a sports game. So in NBA 2K, you can play your game as the Boston Celtics versus the Chicago Bulls, and you can just play. Great. That's not that popular. Another way is to create your own team. And you're the coach, you're the manager, or you can be on the team. And you get a team of kind of scrubs, just no names, whatever, in the league, an average team. But if I want to get a Michael Jordan on my team, I have to buy a pack of cards. And the pack might be $5 of real money, right? And I open the pack, and it's like a blind loot box, which is what we'll talk about next. And the pack opens up on TV, and I remember my boys would be jumping up and down. Oh my God, what am I going to get? What am I going to get? And it opens up and it's boom. It's I don't know, a Jason Tatum gold, and then there's like a Michael Jordan silver, and they have all the different grades of the different levels of cards and players for your team, and they make your team better. So if you have a gold Michael Jordan on your team, fantastic. Whenever you play as Michael Jordan on your team, you guys can win. It's fantastic, right? Then you can trade these cards. You can trade these players as if you're a manager. You can also sell and buy them on this open market. So it literally was like stock trading. You would buy, my boys say, oh my God, Dad, I bought a gold Shaquille O'Neal for, 500 VC, which is virtual currency. And I sold it for, 12,000 VC. I made a bunch of VC off that trade. So it's all gambling and, involved in that. And you're not even realizing it. I did it tons, very fun, it's an entertaining game, it's interesting, but you're not realizing that it's actually getting kids into gambling and the whole idea of wagering. And there's that real fine line between virtual currency and real currency. Sure, if you keep playing and playing and playing, you earn more virtual currency, but it's a lot easier just to put in a credit card and spend $20 and get tons of virtual currency, and you can keep, you translate the real currency into virtual currency. So these companies, these gaming companies, are making millions of dollars off this. When we were young, a video game, you'd buy the game for $30, that's it. You don't add on, you don't subtract, that's it. You play the game, it's over. Now there's all these embedded ways of making money where you end up paying, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on a video game over the years of using it, right? So again, a loot box is known as a crate or a pack, virtual items purchased with real money or in-game currency, but their contents are randomized and unknown before the purchase. So that's like when I would buy a pack of cards, and they'd be $5 packs, $10 packs, $20 packs, because a $20 pack would guarantee you get a diamond player. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, if you ever got a diamond Michael Jordan, it would be incredible, and it just hooks you in. And I remember probably dropping, hundreds of dollars over a couple of years on my kids begging me for virtual currency in these games,
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How do you translate that to even the old world of you'd buy a pack of cards?
Yes.
You go to the shop and you get the card, but there was more, I felt like business practices or
100%.
Value.
Yes.
You could also
correct.
But does this virtual money ever come back into real world, or does it always live there?
Always lives there.
So that's the problem.
Always lives there. There's no way to cash out, But you're absolutely right that my boys also for a little while were into Pokemon cards, right? Everyone's into Pokemon cards at one time. And for those of you who don't know, right, the majority of cards in the pack are kind of like average cards, and then there's like one that's like a an EX or a shiny card or like a DX or whatever. But I would find my boys would open the pack. Did I get the good one? Oh, great. Take the other ones, just toss them, and all they wanted was this one, right? For a while, my boys got into sports cards, right? So they were really big into basketball cards for a while. And we would buy packs that had a certain percentage chance of having an autograph, which is like, oh my God, you hit on an autograph. And actually enough, my boys hit on a huge autograph once. It was, Anthony Edwards, who's this, huge basketball player, right? And rookie year, we opened a pack and we got an autographed Anthony Edwards rookie card, which is like, went on to be worth a lot of money. However, then they would buy packs, no autograph in it. I need another one. So again, it was that dopamine chase, right? Oh my God. So, however, purchasing a pack in real life, you said it's slower. You got to go to the store. You got to have actually $10, $15. You got to go to the store. You have to buy the pack. You have to come home, open it up, rip it. So it certainly can be addictive. But the online, instant, with your tap of your finger is what really is the hook. That's really the hook. But again, so this mechanic is essentially a game of chance, mirroring something like a slot machine or a roulette wheel. And is a very strong predictor of problem gambling in later in life. And you've also seen probably the blind boxes, right? They have the little Harry Potter characters, and you don't know what it's going to be, or a little Lego minifigure, and you have no idea what it's going to be, right? Every single genre now has these blind boxes of characters, and one's going to be really rare, and the kids are always chasing after that. These are all ways of increasing kids' purchasing power towards a lot of these things. And then obviously in-game currency. Right? Games often require players to convert real money into virtual currency, like coins, gems, Robux, which is often confusing and inconsistent exchange rates. You never know what you're getting here, right? Because you can buy $10, get you 100 Pokeballs or whatever, So again, it just makes it really difficult for kids to track their spending, unexpected spending charges and things like that, which makes it very challenging. So this is going to be another quick little video, and this actually is out of ABC News in Australia, because interestingly enough, Australia, of all places, banned completely loot boxes in their video games. They completely said that it's considered, they deemed it as gambling and made it illegal in their country.
Here's a box. We're not going to tell you what's inside. It might be something kind of awesome, then again, it might not. How much would you pay to find out? Every day, people, including kids, are spending millions of dollars to open boxes just like this, all in the hope of winning big. If you think that sounds like gambling, you're not alone. They're called loot boxes, and they've become one of the most controversial aspects of the video game industry. Here's how a loot box works. As a player progresses through a game, they're rewarded with loot. That's the name used to describe in-game items, things such as weapons or cosmetic perks that can help you customize your character's appearance. You could give them a hat, a shiny new sword, or some other accessory to dress them up for fun. You can earn loot by doing well at the game, or by earning currency that you find along the way. Now you've got money to spend at the in-game store. Sometimes these stores are designed to sell just one thing: loot boxes. Think of it as a mystery box. What you get for your virtual cash is a surprise. And like most surprises, there's an element of chance. If you think that sounds similar to gambling, you're not wrong. Like poker machines, loot boxes use sound and visual effects.
Oh, I think this is 2K. Let me see. Hold on.
And anticipation.
Oh no, that's Fortnite.
Pokies and loot boxes also dangle small rewards.
They show NBA 2K here in a minute, I think.
At the same time, tempting them with the potential to hit the jackpot. Because some loot.
Here it is, right here. That's opening a pack in NBA 2K, like I used to do. Yep.
Frequently. Others are prized for how rare they are. All this triggers a surge of dopamine in the player's brain, giving them that feel-good rush that keeps them coming back again and again. Players who use their virtual cash to buy loot boxes can never be quite sure if they'll unwrap something rare and desirable, or an item that's common and useless. The in-game currency or points you use to buy loot can take a long time to build up, but there is a way to take the fast track for a chance at those rare treasures. Forget about make-believe coins and gems. You can spend real money instead. It's much faster to use actual money to exchange for more loot boxes. One report estimated that in 2018, players around the world spent more than $40 billion on loot boxes. And a survey run by the UK's Gambling Commission found that nearly 1/3 of children aged 11 to 16 spent money on them. But can buying loot boxes really be considered gambling? Well, it depends who you ask.
There are now a number of studies that show that loot boxes are associated with gambling and gambling problems. They are a random chance item, you have to make a payment, and you get something that's of value. And then you start to look a lot like a gambling characteristic or a gambling mechanic within the game, which is available to people without any age restrictions or other consumer protections as would be required by any other gambling activity.
The video game industry denies this.
We agree with the UK Gambling Commission, the Australian Gambling Commission, so they aren't gambling, and we also disagree that there's evidence that shows it leads to gambling.
The Interactive Games and Entertainment Association says that loot boxes use the same surprise and delight mechanics that products such as Kinder Surprise chocolate eggs have used for years. But despite the resistance, a growing tide of suspicion and criticism is prompting the games industry to act. Some developers are slowly phasing out loot boxes voluntarily. Others are changing the mechanics so they're more transparent. The online sensation Fortnite now allows players to look inside loot boxes paid for with real money so they can remove the element of chance and decide if it's worth the cost. Other games have removed them altogether. In 2018, Belgium became the first country to ban loot boxes, arguing that games of chance in video games will cause great damage to people, family and society. Other countries could soon follow suit. In Australia, loot boxes have been the subject of 2 government reports. One recommended looking for options for restricting access to loot boxes in video games to adults aged 18 years or over. But for now, loot boxes are largely unregulated, so it's a case of loot box buyer beware.
All right. So yeah, I think Fortnite is a good example because it's such a huge game, and they even eliminated them. However, the skins in Fortnite, which is like your outfit, it has almost like a value, but it's like a social value. Oh, that's a really cool one. That's a really rare one. It's not worth money, but they're still extremely desirable, and you still have to pay money for them. And that's just because the game got so popular. But again, it's really interesting how much it's evolved from when we played Nintendo back in the day, or even PlayStation games where it was a concrete game, you would just play it. There's not really any other way for the companies to get money out of it. Now, Fortnite's a free game. They give it away for free, and then because they make so much money off of all the in-game currency and all the add-ons. So again, a lot of these tricks, they sound just like casinos or the big tobacco and things like that, right? Psychological design tricks, manipulative design features, near miss, right? Visual and auditory cues that make the player feel like they almost won a rare item, pressure them to try again. Perceived value, right? Virtual items like a certain skin or a certain weapon is rare or extra valuable. And the social media gets all into it. When your social media influencers are posting about this, it's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I got this one, and things like that, leveraging all these third-party markets. Limited time offers. Kids will always say, it's only available this week, or I need to get the battle pass. It's only out this week, and then it's closed, and I have to get it now. But again, so it's incredible. Some systems even use these algorithms to match experienced players with newer ones who have desirable items, so to encourage the junior players to make more purchases. So, this is not just, all by chance. This is all, very calculated to hook kids. Social casino games like Fliff, right? These are apps that simulate casino games just like poker, slots, often available for free and using in-game currency, but you can also purchase, with real money. You can't cash out the virtual winnings, of course, so that's why it bypasses all the gambling regulations. But they really talk about how it is a gateway to just being familiar with the terminology and how odds work and just the actual gambling itself, right? Then there's even third-party sites that get involved, right? Like different skins for your games and for your weapons, can be added to on top of different games like Fortnite. And then lastly, the influencer promotions. I know I talked a little bit about that already, but a lot of social media influencers who have a lot of influence over our youth are in the pocket of a lot of these, big companies because they get paid to market, paid to push. And that just makes it more normalized and more attractive to kids. So this is the first-hand account I was talking about. I'll just graze through it a bit, but when I did this presentation 2 years ago in Wakefield, the woman who asked me to do it referred me to this student who was an old student of mine. He was a freshman at UMass, I believe, at the time. And he had a really, really significant challenge with gambling when he was at Wakefield High School. And so I gave him a call. We chatted for a while over the phone. So I'll kind of just scroll through it a little bit. But he says, from his personal experience, gambling became popular when COVID hit, right, in high school. Looks like around 2018. A lot of them were online, a lot more free time. So again, going back to kids that aren't athletes, kids that don't have music. They have a little bit more free time on their hands, so they're spending more time online, right? Older brothers introduce them. I think that happens a lot, right? Older siblings, just like, substance use. You often get a lot of free play to help you start gambling. But if you lose money, most of the guys just wanted to, get one big win. How these books worked was that you would do it online, but the payouts were done weekly through Venmo or cash. And they have a bunch of options available, whether it's sports betting or the online casino. Once I became a little bit older, I got a job. Like many sophomores and juniors, I started to gamble more and more. Soon became this addiction, and I knew kids were losing hundreds of dollars every week. Eventually, I received the opportunity to take a step up, and this was being an agent. So essentially, you're a middleman for a bookie where you have a select group of kids in the school that you're at, and you collect their money and you deliver their winnings. And you get to keep 30% of the winnings. It wasn't much, but slowly grew over time. I would say that seeing the betting experience from both ends helped me understand not only the addiction, but the warning signs. So in regards to that paragraph, I know that this happens at every high school. It's wild. When I was in college, I went to UMass. Some of my buddies gambled on sports, and they had a bookie in the area, that they would book through, right? Online gambling wasn't legal in Massachusetts, things like that, right? And I'm sure I remember a few run-ins with the bookie when they lost big and things like that. It wasn't pretty, but my God, we were certainly not huge gamblers. We weren't like the underworld or anything like that. But I was mortified to hear this, that local bookies basically will hire high school kids to be their collection people, and basically take bets, collect the money when they lose, deliver the money when they win, and you get a little bit of a cut of the profit. And I know for an absolute fact that this happens at Winchester High School. I have heard from multiple students that there, even as early as end of last year, beginning of this year, that there are, gambling opportunities, kids online. There's a certain website, you download it, you make your bets through there, and then exactly like they said, at the end of the week, you have to pay a certain kid that's in school. He delivers the money to someone else outside of school who's older, maybe a college kid, and then they settle up and they pay out and things like that. So it's fairly sophisticated. And something you wouldn't think would happen at the high school level, but it is definitely happening at the large majority of high schools. And I go back and forth. Is it, obviously Wakefield is not an affluent community as Winchester is stereotypically. So I don't know that there's any bounds of where this would or wouldn't happen. But it seems like it's fairly pervasive. Last one here. Some of my friends still owe money. It honestly ruins relationships. Both of us were just kids at the end of the day. There are many ways to get into betting. Some of the free websites like Fliff, which is interesting, right? That's the one that the story was about, that you use fake coin credits. My son, I think he asked me, probably he was in 7th or 8th grade, he asked me, can I download Fliff? It's a casino game. It's not gambling. It's just fun. It's a game. And I was like, no, I'm all right. You don't need to be. It's fine. You don't really need that game. There are also underground books, right, which are most popular to kids who aren't 21 plus. Mostly an older student who would run the book with younger members on it. The last would be to bet illegally with your parents using your social security number and information or their credit card information just on the phone, which I've heard of as well through my clients. One of my clients took his parents' social security number and credit card number and just plugged it in and just used that for a while, until he lost too much and got in trouble. So obviously some real sports books like FanDuel or DraftKings, where you deposit money, a lot of times they give you $20 to start for free to hook you on as well. But it's credit based, and they simply add and subtract at the end of the week, just like a real bookie would do. So very dangerous. And I was really surprised that this was going on. And like I said, I did this interview with this guy about 2 years ago, and then as my own boys got a little older and started going through 8th, 9th, 10th grade, I would hear stories from them, from their friends, from some of my private practice clients, and it was similar everywhere. Same stories, same running in the background. So really over the last 2 years is when my eyes really got more open to the gambling. I kind of hadn't even really thought about it, like, everyone just does a little bit of it, it's harmless. But it really started to surprise me as it went on. So this is the FLIF, right? So I just took a few of these screenshots, right? Look at this. Loyalty rewards. Complete challenges, refer your friends, and redeem XP for your gift cards, right? So that sounds like one of those, very similar, attempts to hook kids. Badges and prizes. Win your picks to move up the leaderboards and levels. Become a FLIF legend. Right? These are all hooks to get kids to play more. Claim your daily currency and play in FLIF coin or FLIF cash with no purchase necessary. So again, you can play with FLIF coins or FLIF cash and collect your daily currency so that every day you log in, you get a handful more of these free coins. So the more you log in every day in a row, you get more and more and more because they're trying to increase usage. Again, free to play, right? Social sports gaming. FLIF turns sports prediction into a social free to play game. But this is basically a priming site for sports gambling. So again, I did a little bit of research and it said, while not owned by a single large gaming company, FLIF has attracted investments from firms actively in the gaming space. I said that doesn't really take a genius to figure out, right? So all of these large scale, gambling organizations that are investing in gambling would love to invest and fund a game like FLIF because it's just pushing youth towards it, right? Again, similar to how big tobacco got youth hooked on cigarettes back in the day. So their operational model is legally distinct from real money gambling, like sportsbook, like DraftKings and FanDuel, because it uses a dual currency system using FLIF coins and FLIF cash, which can be redeemed for real prizes through sweepstakes. So it's very shady and dicey and confusing of how it all works out, but technically they skirt all the true gambling laws and regulations. I did look, the company's model has been faced with several class action lawsuits claiming it is gambling and it is unregulated. And there was, many, when I looked it up, many lawsuits going on. But it is, to this day, it is an independent company that utilizes a specific legal structure to offer sports prediction games without being classified as a traditional gambling operator. So again, to me, it's one of those examples of when technology moves faster than legislation, right? I mean, there's many of those examples throughout the years, but this one is kind of definitely at the top at the moment. So going back to now, what do we do to reduce this risk? Similar to what I had said to Dot earlier around whether, in my opinion, whether it's substance use, whether it's social media, whether any risky behavior for our youth, it's all about managing exposure, reducing exposure as much as possible, and also being just informed as much as possible. Knowing about trends and just what's hot, what's going on, what are our kids experiencing. I joke a lot because it's kind of easier for me because my entire life is high school and middle school age kids. I've got them at home, I've got them at work, I've got them in my private practice. So I hear a lot of the trends. I know a lot of what's going on. And that's how I find out a lot of my information of what kids are being exposed to and what I need to talk to my kids, my clients, my private practice clients about. But for those of you parents who are not in education or working with kids, a lot of this just flies under the radar, and it just you don't get to see a lot of it. So being informed is obviously the biggest thing. And again, reducing exposure to gambling, just being really careful, right, about what example you're setting for your kids around just what you do in your house around lottery tickets and poker games and things like that. Again, certainly, by God, it is not some direct, causal effect here of if you play poker. I mean, my family, my wife and my two boys, every once in a while, a couple times a year, I'll get my poker set out and we'll play a fun little game of poker for quarters or things like that. It's a blast. It's fun. It's like a family game night. That's not the end of the world. But again, it's just making sure you're on top of it with the messaging, right? It's the same type of thing where if on a Monday Night Football, if I have one or two beers right in front of my kids, right? They see me using alcohol in a mature way. They don't see me abusing it. My messaging to them around alcohol use is healthy and it's balanced and it's not excessive. Similar to if they see me buy a scratch ticket once every 3 or 4 months, it's the same thing. It's not different. And that's kind of what the biggest takeaway for me on this is that gambling is actually really close to substance use in terms of the awareness and overall messaging. Establish clear rules around screen time, and obviously making sure you know what apps are on your kids' phones and what they're participating in and what they're playing and how much money, real money they're spending on a lot of these games, right? If you notice your child playing any gambling-related games, maybe have a conversation. My boys played a lot of the sports games that involved some in-game currency, but I drew the line. I never let them download any of the poker games or the casino types of games because to me it was just one step closer to that type of gambling. Again, talk, right? Set the tone. This talk's a little bit much, but saying avoid language like I bet you can't do this, I bet you can't do that, or rewarding them with money for certain chance. I mean, to me that might be a little far, but again, it's just being really mindful about your messaging. And again, it's just, I feel like all of us, right, as parents, we're always heightened when it comes to safety things like, again, substance use or social media or all these other areas of life. But my radar was never up with gambling, ever. It was just in the background going on, yep, absolutely, whatever. It was never up until 2 years ago when I was asked to kind of research this and put a little presentation out on it. And I realized how ingrained it is in our society and how dirty a lot of these video game companies are targeting kids and how they're really hooking them in and getting it going. So again, stating the facts, right? That's what I talk to my boys about, right? The odds of winning the lottery, when they say, oh, the Powerball, it's not $1 billion or whatever, you gotta play. The odds are, much higher of, getting struck by lightning or being in a plane crash twice and all these different things than actually winning some of these, prizes. And I think that helps a lot with kind of bringing kids down to earth a little bit. But again, talking about gambling just as you would talk about other addictions. Knowing the signs, right? Changes of attitude, around school, extracurricular activities, finances, changes in mood, any atypical, any change of baseline from your kids, something's not right? So again, this is just something else to think about outside of, mental health things or substance use. Noticeably interesting competition or winning. I had suggested one time we had said to my kids, hey, let's play poker tonight, Oh, not for money. Like, why would we play not for money? What are you talking about? I don't want to play not for money. That's like a little key, like, oh God, I guess you're right, But we know, right, as adults, it's not as fun not to play not for money, right? And when we played not for money, my boys were going all in. I'm going all in every single hand, because there was no value attached to it, right? And you're like, oh God, wow, it is interesting how when you add a little monetary risk, it makes it more exciting. The stakes are higher, so you actually play more. So it makes sense how all these gambling things can become very addictive, right? And it makes sense how younger brains are just so much more susceptible to falling into that trap. Stashes of money, yeah, I think if I found a couple grand in my son's underwear drawer. I think I'd be nervous if he had a gambling problem. But that's about it.